Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to the inaugural episode of It's All About the
About the
Fuzz.
fuzz.
In the co-captain's chair, joining me is Miss Extraness herself, Karen LaPreziosa from the Hudson Valley Squares. What's up, Karen?
Hi. Oh, not a lot. I've been looking forward to this show, and I've been getting a lot of positive feedback, and people are excited about it, and I hope we can keep it going like.
I think people like this kind of music. People like guitar-based music that's heavy on fuzz and crazy grooves and doomy and psychedelic, and that's kind of the focus of the show. Is we're going to talk about bands and albums that bridge the gap, straight doom, straight stoner, straight psych, and everything in between that kind of intermingles and stuff. And as most of you know, there are thousands and thousands of bands all around the globe that play in this kind of fuzz laden music. Again, some of it you can call doom, some you can call stoner, some you can call psych. Sometimes prog leaks in, sometimes punk leaks in,
Sometimes
sometimes
they call it desert. There's blackened doom. There's
post rock. There's just all this weird stuff. There's all these great record labels, and there's a lot of classic bands who kind of have done this sort of thing. So, what we decided to do today for the first episode is Karen and I both feel very strongly that the kind of the basis for all of this stuff, or most of it anyway, kind of starts with doom, right? And both of our main loves is doom. I love doom metal. Karen loves doom metal, and we wanted to kind of start this whole series off by talking about the foundational must-have doom albums that aren't named Black Sabbath, right? We both love Sabbath. I could talk about Black Sabbath all the time, but we talk about Black Sabbath a lot on the channel. We're only going to bring Sabbath up as kind of like a point of reference from time to time here, but we're not going to talk about Sabbath albums. We're not going to talk about Sabbath's place in the history of Doom, and as far as the best Doom albums, we already know that they're number one, right?
It's redundant.
Yeah, it's redundant. So we're not going to do that. It's a given. Sabbath, the Godfathers. We're going to talk about the other stuff. So what we've done today is Karen has picked out her 5 kind of like indispensable doom albums, the ones you got to have. I picked out 10. I decided to go a little bit extra, right? So what we're going to do is see, I got some extra. So and we'll talk a little bit about each album that we have picked and why we feel it's so important, and it's one of the doom albums you need to have in your collection if you're going to experiment with doom. And how we'll do it on each turn. Karen will give 1, I'll give 2. We'll go back and forth till we go all the way. I don't know, Karen, I don't really have mine in any order. I didn't really rank these.
I don't either.
Yeah,
I don't either.
So
I also want to say, excuse me, that if you think you don't like doom metal, there's a good chance that you do, and you just might not realize it. Same thing with psych or stoner. It's so infiltrated. It's soaked into hard rock and heavy metal and just rock and roll. It's branched off into so many different categories.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've seen, it's funny you mentioned that, because I saw, I don't even remember what show it was on recently, where I think we mentioned we're going to do this show, whatever, and someone had mentioned, or a couple people mentioned, it's like, well, I kind of like Black Sabbath, but I don't think I like doom. And I'm like, well, if you kind of like Black Sabbath, there's a good chance you might like some of this stuff. And if you kind of like classic heavy metal, there's a good chance you like some of this stuff. If you kind of like a band like Blue Cheer, you might like some of this stuff. I mean, Karen said it, hit the nail on the head. The basis for doom and stoner and psych infiltrates so many other different types of rock, grunge, certainly some punk, certainly some traditional metal. There's elements of this all over the place. So, and I think, Karen and I haven't compared lists, so I have no idea what she's picking, but it'll be interesting to see like how many of these bands kind of differ from each other and how some might be similar. And with all that being said, I'll have Karen kick us off with her first choice for today.
All right. I am going to say, well, everybody knows I like Church of Misery. I love them a lot. And I think they're an excellent representation of doom metal. And I'm going to go with Houses of the Unholy. One of my favorite songs of all time. El Padrino kicks that off. It's, I think, a perfect doom album for people who are just kind of getting into it. It's not too slow. A lot of people complain about doom being too slow, and it's mid-tempo. the vocals aren't clean, but they're not exactly like barking dogs or, people who complain about those sort of vocals. They're somewhere in the middle. They got a little groove to them sometimes. I just love it that the sound, the tone is so dense, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. So I highly recommend Church of Misery, Houses of the Unholy. I think you'll be any album I like, from them, but I think that's my favorite, and
Cool.
I think that's a good segue, like a good way to get in.
Cool. And we'll put these lists down in the comments below, so people want to go and check them out. They can certainly do so. Yeah, I mean, the one cool thing about Doom that I've especially kind of putting together this like essential listening list here is that vocals are like from band to band are all over the place. There's some that they do kind of the gruff thing. There's some that are like high pitched, like traditional metal vocals. There's some that have that Ozzy thing going on. It's kind of all over the map. There's really to me, the only thing that's really consistent across most of the bands are the style of riffing. But even there's even some that differ a little bit, right? So
right, and I think there are bands like Yob and Cathedral who have incorporated all of those sounds, all of those vocal styles. I think you'll really see that with Yob too. More than ever. I mean, he sings and then he growls. I mean, it depends on the song and the emotion.
Yep, for sure. So I decided with my first two picks, these, I think out of everything, these are slightly unconventional, but I lumped them together for a reason. So my number 10 here, this band and the next one are considered new wave of British heavy metal bands.
Okay.
Which is kind of strange because you normally don't associate new wave of British heavy metal and Doom, but there were two bands that kind of toiled in that time period that pretty much were as doomy as Nawabum is ever going to get. So I'm going to go with Pagan Altar.
Yes.
Judgment of the Dead. Ryan Scow is probably like, yes.
He's loving this. Yes. Yes.
So this is 1972. This is the debut album from these guys, and it would be at the time their only release. And then, of course, they've released other things in the years since. But they call themselves like a new wave of British heavy metal, but kind of like epic doom. These guys are really different from all the other bands I'm going to talk about today.
Yeah.
This is very occult lyrical themes. You got Terry Jones, the singer. It's a father-son thing in this band, right? He's the singer. He's got this really odd but very unique singing style, right? It's very British sounding, but very different. His son Alan plays amazing guitar. The riffs are great. The soloing is off the charts. But what's really cool about these guys, there's lots of prog, there's lots of classic metal, there's some folk influences.
Yeah.
As far as songs to check out, In the Wake of Amadeus is crazy good. Title track is excellent. Judgment of the Dead, Black Mass, and Reincarnation is also really good. For me, I would describe these guys, take Wishbone Ash, Black Sabbath, and Coven, kind of put them all together.
Maybe mix them up.
Maybe get something that sounds like Pagan Altar, but they have like, I think 3, 4, I forget how many studio albums they have, but the singer Terry passed away a couple of years ago, so I'm not really sure what they're doing nowadays, but they have reunited in more recent years. So very cool band, very different. I would say though, only really their first album is the one that I consider to be a true Doom album. The other ones are a little different from that path a little bit, but they're still great. But yeah, Judgment of the Dead by Pagan Altar is my first choice, and my second, released in the same year, 1982, Witchfinder General, Death Penalty.
Yes, I love that album.
It's a great album, right? It's so short too. It's like what?
30, I know.
2 minutes long or whatever it is. So again, these two bands really are in my eyes, the only two new wave of British heavy metal bands that you could call Doom. Much of this music here is a little bit more up tempo and galloping than most of this other stuff we're going to talk about, but you got Zeeb Parks, who's the singer. He's got this high-pitched vocal style. Phil Cope, the guitar riffs, really potent, really heavy. Check out Invisible Hate, which is a great track that leads off the album. The title track is good. Witchfinder General is another great song. Really good album. Both of their albums are really, really good. I like this one just a little bit better. But yeah, Pagan Altar and Witchfinder General are my first two picks for today. And I'll turn it back over to Karen.
Nice. Well, we spoke about Cathedral, and I'm going to say Cathedral, Force of Equilibrium. I love it. I have to say, it's definitely grown on me since it was released in '96, I think. And can be very sludgy, but you know, the vocals are diverse. Like I mentioned before, he does some clean singing at the end. I just love it. It's just so heavy, and Lee Dorian is amazing. I want to say something about Lee Dorian. He's the singer, and he also owns Rise Above Records.
Yep.
And what he's done for underground music is, and he's got a great record store from what I hear. I hope to get there one day. Rise Above Records in London. And I mean, it's just it at the time when it was released, I was so not paying attention to that kind of music. I was very much into garage punk and stuff, and it's the antithesis of doom, but I can't stop listening to it, and I love it. I love the versatility of the record because it's slow and sludgy, and then it picks up speed, and Lee Dorian's vocals can be very Napalm Death. It's the band that he used to front, like Ebony Tears I'm thinking of, and then he's singing at the end of the record. So I really love that one, and it's a trippy record for me. And they were part of this resurgence of this
Oh,
kind of
100%.
music.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and I just think it's important to have that record.
And I think that was actually 91, I think.
Was it 91?
Yeah, it was pretty early. There's a reason why I kind of know that, because I'm picking one of their albums as well, and it came out after.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, yeah. You know, it's funny because I think a lot of people cite Forest of Equilibrium as their favorite Cathedral album. It's their debut album. It is very different from all the ones that came after it, right? It's their kind of slow and
Sludgy.
sludgy and monolithic, and the vocals are kind of growly, right? So it's kind of like death doom sort of, and the long songs, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. I should have grabbed it. It's a really great album cover too. So it's a great pick. It's a great pick.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go right around the same time. We're kind of in line here. So my next two are from 1992. I didn't kind of set weird how that is, right? My 10 and 9 are both from 82. My 8 and 7 are both from 92. I didn't do that on purpose, guys. I swear. So I'm going to go with Sleep.
Yes.
Sleep, Holy Mountain.
Yes.
California band, their second album. You know, most people will pick Dope Smoker, and I love Dope Smoker. I find this way more interesting, though.
Much better.
And again, you know, there's probably going to be people watching that are going to say, well, Pete, Karen, you could have put Sleep in the Stoner episode. And I'm like, yeah, I may pick Dope Smoker for the Stoner episode, but this to me is a total Doom album. I mean,
or the sciences. And I want to say with Doom and Stoner, it overlaps.
Some of the bands are, some of the bands are.
That's why we're doing this episode. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think a band like Sleep can infiltrate both, but I don't think like Monster Magnet or Fu Manchu are Doom, right?
No,
that's different. This to me could go in either camp for sure.
Right.
I mean, to me, this is one of the great Stoner Doom albums of all time. You got Matt Pike on here. You know, he's also in High on Fire, right? Matt's awesome, great riff guy. Al Cisneros does the weird kind of spacey, Ozzy, stoned out vocals. To me, this album, it's not the most original album I've ever heard, but you know, I mean, just look at the guys on the back. The bonds, right? To me, this is glorious Master of Reality era Sabbath worship. There's no two ands, if, or buts about it. Just one huge riff and groove after another. Dragonaut is great. Gypsy, Holy Mountain, just massive stuff here. I love the production of this. I know they've remixed this later on. I think the original mix sounds a little worse than the one that came out afterwards, but yeah, this is a great band. You mentioned their most recent album, which is terrific. These guys have ever released a bad album, and I just love them to death. So yeah, Sleep is my number 8, and then number 7, possibly the most underrated band on my list that nobody ever talks about. This is their second album, also from 1992. They're from Texas. The band is Solitude Eternus. Beyond the Crimson Horizon. Yes. Great band. Nobody talks about these guys.
No.
Robert Lowe on lead vocals, who would later join Candlemass for a number of albums.
Right.
To me, I think the reason why he got that gig is because this band is like the US version of Candlemass. Epic doom, twin lead guitars, killer riffs. He's got the big soaring over the top vocals, All their albums are strong. I think this one might be my best. This is my pick. They're all really good. And to me, an underrated band. Go listen to one track to check out is Black Castle. Absolutely crushes. So Solitude Eternus and Sleep from 1992 are my next two picks. And I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, since we're talking about Sleep, I was going to pick Holy Mountain. So let's elaborate on that one a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
I like it. It's got a groove to it.
Yeah,
It's not super slow. It's night, and Al Cisneros' vocals are a little weird. I like that.
They're totally weird.
He's trying to do a clean singing, but he's limited.
Yeah.
But his bass
it
playing
works,
is
all right. Yeah, it works.
Yeah, it's great. The lyrics are trippy. His bass playing is amazing. For a three-piece, I always think that you're pulling off a three-piece, you really got to know what you're doing, especially to work together like that. And yes, I people will say Dope Smoker, but not as to get into Sleep. That's not the album that you get into and about. And yeah, I'm gonna, what else can I say? Holy Mountain, it's a great movie and a great album as well. So yeah, I dig it. So that was my other choice. This is why I got so excited when you said it.
You know, it's funny because if you look at the two albums together, right, Dope Smoker and this one, I think Dope Smoker is the album that you want to put on. I don't do this stuff, but it's like, but if you want to sit and do massive bong hits and just kind of sit on the couch and go, yeah, man, for an hour.
Yeah.
That's the
And read
perfect
Dune.
that's the perfect album for that. This is more of a headbanging album. And granted,
Right.
you can do that stuff too to that. You know, whatever. It's like they're very different from each other. And that
Yes,
is
absolutely.
that album's very drony, right? And sludgy. And they're both great. They're just totally different moods. But when I reach for Sleep, I either reach for the more recent album or Holy Mountain first.
Right.
You got to be in the mood to listen to Dope Smoker, right?
Oh, honestly, to be frank, I'm really never in that mood. It's such an interesting album. It caused the band to break up.
Yeah.
Because it's one song. And the record label they were on a major label, I think, at the time, and they did not want to release it. And there's been 3 different versions of Dope Smoker.
Yeah.
One of them is actually called Jerusalem.
Yep.
There's
different album covers, different. I think they arranged it, and it's got a weird history. Yeah,
it is a weird history. Yeah,
but you know, people who partake love that album, and I totally get it. Right, I totally get it. It's perfect for that scenario. It's just it's not my deal, so you know, whatever. But hey, anybody who is, that's totally cool, right? That's
totally cool. It's kind of like what Rush was for me when I was in high school.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. All right, number 6 and 5 for me. I had to pick one album from this band because they got to be on my list. I love all their albums, but I tend to favor Day of Reckoning by Pentagram from 1987.
Okay.
Second album from this Virginia band, who, funny enough, they have roots that go back to the early 70s. I mean, these guys were kind of contemporaries of Sabbath, really, for the most part, but they didn't really start recording full-length albums until the 80s, right? So here you got Victor Griffin, great riff guy, right? Crushing riffs all over this album. You got Bobby Liebling on vocals, really haunting kind of biker rock vocal style. It kind of sounds weird, but it fits the music, and he's a character. He's got a very storied life and tragic life, and we won't go into that there. Watch the
I was just gonna say, watch the documentary. If you want to know why Pentagram never really recorded till so late, it's all in the documentary.
Yeah, it's a very sad story, but they've created some great music.
Yeah.
Kind of, to me, they always reminded me, especially early on, like Blue Cheer meets Black Sabbath. But this album just absolutely crushes from start to finish. They have so many good albums. Evil Seed is a great song. Listen to that and be prepared to meet your doom. It's just a track. So that's my number 6. My number 5, another band I could have picked any of their first 4 albums, and generally speaking, my favorite fluctuates between 2 or 3 of them, but I decided to go with the album I think is best for a newbie to the band. And that is the self-titled release from Trouble from 1990. It's their 4th album.
Yes.
To me, the first 3 are great traditional doom albums, but here the band kind of discovered some groove, and I think this
Mm,
album just, man, it just, you can't sit still when this album is playing. There's a
yeah,
little bit of psych to it. There's biker and stoner elements here, but it's just great groove laden doom. Just go and listen to At the End of My Days, which is the kickoff track. It's
yeah.
absolutely killer. Eric Wagner, great singer. You got the dynamic duo on guitars, Bruce Franklin and Rick Wartell, who just killer riffs, lots of twin guitar solos. I always say that Trouble reminds me of like classic Sabbath and mid 70s Judas Priest. Um, great album. Again, sometimes it's not my number one, it's my number two, but I think this is the album that I
Uh,
always recommend to people who have never listened to Trouble before. So yeah, Trouble and Pentagram are my number 6 and 5.
that's awesome. Um, my next one is Electric Wizard, Come My Fanatics. I like this one a lot. A lot of people say, oh, Electric Wizard, dope smoker, but I'm not a fan of the vocals after that point. If you guys ever heard or listened to the Butthole Surfers, Gibby Haynes sounds like he's singing through a megaphone, and that's the way Electric Wizard and Joss Osborne went with that, and I didn't like it. If you could just remove the vocals, they would be so much better for me. But Come My Fanatics is when he was singing, like before that, and some of the notes, I it's just the riffs are so classic, and they just grab me right here in my stomach, and they get tight. I it's been a minute since I like listened to it back to front. I just love that record. That's my favorite. I can't even think of a standout track because it just all it just all goes together for me. I just love the whole record. But that's the one I like it better than the first. And I mean I like Electric Wizard after that, but that's the best one. That's the vocals are much better on this one.
Yeah, the early stuff is great, right? It's, yeah,
Yeah.
they're a much loved band, and but they're such an underground band too. It's right. It's like I don't think I've ever come across anybody who likes this style of music who has had anything bad to say about Electric Wizard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that I dislike the vocals. I just like them better on that album. So, doesn't it remind you of that guy from the Bottle Surfers when he sings through the megaphone?
It's just, well, more about that in a minute.
Okay. Okay.
My number 4 is from 1986, the third album from this band. First album with Wino joining the band from the Obsessed, Saint Vitus.
Vitus. I knew you were going to say it.
This is great, right? So, Wino now joins up with the big monolithic riffs from Dave Chandler. Huge riffs, screaming wah-wah guitar solos all over the place, long songs. I mean, Saint Vitus is just classic. They are, to me, what you would call like a biker band who discovered doom, and there you have it. It's so raw, and it just sounds like it was recorded in the basement, but that's the charm of the whole thing. Another band that's never released a bad album, but yeah, it's just, Dave Chandler, another riffmeister, just great stuff here. And I love the kind of the weird psych element of this band. Like when he just, in
Yeah.
the middle of the song, he just steps on that wah-wah pedal and just starts soloing for like 2-3 minutes, and it's just great. It's all over the place, classic stuff. So yeah, I had to pick Born Too Late. And then my number 3 is
there it is.
There it is, right? So Electric Wizard, Dope Throne. And I agree 100% with what Karen said. There's like a weird effect on his vocals on this album. And even his guitar tone is like a fucking chainsaw. It's like the guitar riffs are so massive and grimy and dirty and heavy. To me, this whole album is kind of like Sabbath meets Motorhead meets early Venom. It's just grimy and disgusting and so heavy, and between the vocals and the guitars, it's so full of gain and distortion, but I love it.
It's thick. It's a thick record. It's so thick. I mean, whether I like the vocals or not, it's just so thick, and it is I get that eye rolling and so like I have I can't deny it. It's such a great record.
Yeah, and probably probably one of the most, it's not really, it's not an extreme metal album by any means, but
No.
probably the most extreme sounding album on my list. And you know what blew my mind, Karen? It's like I was sitting there putting like all the release dates of all these albums. I can't believe this album was released in 2000. It's like for
Yeah.
some reason in my head, I have that these early Electric Wizard albums were way older than that, but they're really not. It's crazy.
How old is Come My Fanatics?
I was only like what, 2 years before this, something like that. I mean, it's just
Yeah, and then the
crazy.
first one was a year or two before that.
Yeah, I don't know
So
why I had it in my head like this band came out like in the late 80s, early 90s, but it's like it really they haven't been around all that long. But it just seems
right.
like they're a classic band, but you know, they're not all that old. So it's just,
Yeah. Yeah. But I have to say with them and like Church of Misery, they do a lot of this 90s thing, like the old releases. They play a lot of samples from movies and stuff like that. That was very big in the 90s.
yeah.
And in a way, it kind of dates it, but the songs themselves are so good. But you don't have that with Sleep. Sleep to me is timeless.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I'm just making a note, like Electric Wizard and Church of Misery like to put a lot of like quotes from movies and, which was very popular at that time.
True. That's right.
All right. Oh my gosh. I'm going to say Witchfinder General, Friends of Hell.
You picked the other one. Very cool. Okay.
Yeah, I love it. I love that record. I listen to it all the time. And
I'll grab it. Hold on. Keep talking.
okay. Again, it's not too slow, not too fast. It's traditional metal on a doomy side. Yeah, I just like it a lot. Lyrics are fun. I think it's a great starter into doom. You know what I mean? I think a lot of times how slow, like maybe Cathedral, it's a little too slow and could be off-putting. But I don't think you'll find that with Witchfinder General or anything like so good. I'm kind of mad at myself that I didn't really get into them until my 40s. So I like ignored it. I don't know why.
I didn't listen to them in the 80s either. I
Mm-mm.
only started listening to them maybe within the last 10 years. So
Yeah,
yeah,
me too. Me too.
I find that like at the time of the new wave of British heavy metal, I listened to like a bunch of bands, but not all of them.
Yeah, there were
And I
so
just kind of
many.
ignored a lot of the other ones. So I started getting into a lot of the more fringe bands, like much later on, including them.
Mhm.
And it's a shame they only did 2 albums. I mean, that's the weird thing about the new wave of British heavy metal. It's like you had all these great bands who came and went really quickly and only released an album or two or three, and then were kind of like forgotten. It's only like the big bands that like Maiden and Saxon and Def Leppard
Right.
and so on and so forth that really made it big. All these other great bands that just like faded into obscurity.
There's a ton of them.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Satan. Satan is bigger now than they ever were.
Yeah.
They have one
Yeah.
album.
Yep.
So
And a lot of good ones now. So.
yeah.
Cool. I'm glad we covered both the Witchfinder General albums. It's cool. So another repeat band in our list here today, but a different album. I'm going to 1993's The Ethereal Mirror from Cathedral.
Yeah.
I love
So
this
good.
album. I absolutely adore this album. This is their second album. These guys, of course, from the UK.
Yeah.
And this album is really different from the one that Karen picked, The Forest of Equilibrium, because again, like I mentioned, that album is slow and
It's very
dirgy and
mhm.
growly and kind of like where doom and death metal kind of meet a little bit. And
Yeah.
here they just
No.
moved on to faster paced songs, shorter songs, a lot more groove.
Yes.
And I tell you, Gary Jennings is one of the great guitar riff masters of all time. Lee Dorian's vocals, they're not for everybody,
No.
but they're so unique. And I
gotta say,
really,
you're making me reconsider my pick.
because this is a good album, right? I mean, this is a really
Yeah,
good
it is a good album.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of like on the one that I picked, Ebony Tears. Like this, it's maybe it's not the best gateway album for Doom, where he's just like,
But the funny thing is, I guarantee you a lot of people who are watching are also going to pick that album because a lot of people really love the debut. I love it too. I just love this one more. And, I mean, this has Midnight Mountain on it.
Yeah.
Mountain just crushes. I absolutely love it. uh yeah, Phantasmagoria, Jaded Entity, and there's so many great songs on here. And this album just
This is so good. I
so
know.
good. And I love the artwork on their albums. I mean, it's just this is
Yeah, yeah. I wish
so
I
cool.
had that
So
CD.
cool, so trippy, you know. I mean, look at this. I should probably open the whole thing up so everybody. I mean, look at that. Very
And you
cool.
know what's amazing is that Lee Dorian came from Napalm Death,
I
which
know,
is
right? To do
so
this.
different than Cathedral,
Yeah.
and it has, it's like the opposite. And it's amazing. And he's like my latest crush now. I'm just so into anything that guy does at this moment. So yeah, he's really interesting. Such a great record.
And I want to echo what Karen said before. He's got a great record label in Rise Above, and
Mm.
he's got actually it's like a two-part label. So he's got Rise Above Records, which is all about promoting and releasing newer bands who are doing this sort of thing. And then he's got Rise Above Relics, where he goes and finds stuff from the vaults, unreleased albums by unknown bands from
Yes.
30, 40, 50 years ago. And that's really cool too. So I love these labels that promote this type of music and, bring a lot of stuff from the underground or from the vaults into the public eye. So yeah, major props to Lee for doing that. What a great record label. So we'll be touching in the months ahead on a lot of these labels and some of the highlight releases on their labels. We'll get more into that as we get along. All right. So
Oh
my
yeah,
final
'cause I
pick
could talk
today.
about that label all day.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. In fact, I'm just getting they're releasing two new albums this week. I think Friday on the label. That's the first two new releases in a little while. So
Yeah, it's
I
been
gotta
a
get
minute.
both of those. My top pick. Well, I don't know. Again, I don't have these in any order, but this is one of my
Yeah.
favorites. From 1987.
Yep,
We're
I
gonna go
know
to,
it.
we're gonna go to Sweden now.
I
So
knew you were gonna
album
say. Yeah,
Nightfall from Candlemass.
right on. Right
You
on.
know, as much as I love Epicus, Doomicus, Metallicus, their debut, as much as I love Ancient Dreams and a whole bunch of their other albums, for me, it's the first one I ever heard. Pretty much the classic lineup of the band. Messiah Marcolin comes into the band to take over the vocals.
Mhm.
You get the classic lineup formed. You got basically the bassist Leif Edling writes all the music for the band.
Yeah.
He comes up with all the great riffs and all the vocal, I mean, all the lyrics and stuff. You got Mats Bjorkman and Lars Johansson who play all the guitars. It's just massive guitar power. To me, Candlemass have always been about classic Sabbath meets like Ronnie James Dio era
Yeah.
Rainbow. Big and epic. The Well of Souls, Dark of the Veils of Death, Bewitched, Black Candles, At the Gallows End, Samaritan. I mean, every song on here is just epic.
Yeah.
All the production, just an amazing album. For me, you can't have a top 10 all-time Doom without Candlemass. Just so good.
Actually, I had Epicus, Doomicus, Metallicus on my list, and that to me is definite, but I just assumed you were going to pick that one.
Oh.
So I mean, so I kind of scratched it. I was like, oh, we're going to overlap all the time, but yeah, Candlemass.
We really didn't though. Yeah, which we really didn't.
Yeah, I know. But I have another one.
Okay.
It's this is an easily digestible, more of traditional metal, but it definitely has its moments. And I think this is a great gateway to this kind of music. And I'm gonna say The Sword, Age of Winters, such a classic record. The riffs are heavy, the vocals are weird, like El Cisneros. That guy has a little flat, an odd voice, but I love it. I just do. And it's just so heavy and traditional, and it slows down and it speeds up, and they sing about gods of Norse. I don't know. It's just such a great record. And I think a lot of people like it. I really do.
That's
And
one of
they're
my favorite Sword albums. Yeah.
me too. It's definitely one of my favorites. And I've been thinking a lot about it lately because I got that Record Store Day reissue that they put out. So I've been playing a lot of The Sword. And yeah, I think it's a great way to get into Doom or Stoner, just a good path.
Especially if you want to get something that's more recent, right? Like more modern.
Right.
And they're a great pick for either category, right? Because actually all three, because the early albums are very doomy.
Yes.
And they move a little more in a stoner direction. And then they start doing all this weird kind of like retro rock and psych stuff before they broke up. So there was like this kind of transition on all their albums, and they're all really good. You know,
I like them
a
all.
couple are not as good as the earlier ones, in my opinion, but man, those first like 3 or 4.
Oh, awesome. Heavy, heavy, heavy. And
that's a good pick. That's a good pick for more modern stuff for sure. There's a lot of great modern doom bands. Like
we just touched on the surface. That's
yeah. I mean, we just, you know, I have, for me, I have a hard time. Maybe 10 years from now, I'll change my stance on this. But for right now, where we are, I have a hard time picking something from the 2000s as like essential classic doom, because it's not quite classic yet. But I totally agree with you, because for someone who maybe wasn't around when all these albums came out, it's all new to them, right? So the Sword is a great place to start. I think I went, and you did mostly on yours as well. I kind of went with some of the classics of the genre.
Yeah.
And back to the 80s, you know, mostly in the 80s and the 90s, right? But yeah, I think if we were to do this again and only pick like bands who came out post like 2000, absolutely the Sword is on my list. Absolutely, like Pallbearer is on my list. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Chemist is on my list. I mean, there's a lot of bands who have been
yeah,
fairly busy. There's a lot of them. There's a ton of them. So yeah, but these are, we talked today about the classics. So and I would recommend to anybody to get any of our picks, but more importantly to dive into their catalogs as well. Except for Witchfinder General, because we named the only 2 albums they have. But yeah, but all these other ones have many other albums, and I think any other picks would be absolutely perfect. So it'll be interesting to see what everybody thinks of some of our picks in the comments below, as well as other albums that they think might be a essential listening for people wanting to get into doom. That's kind of what it's all about. So yeah, that's our first episode. So we're going to kind of, so just to give everybody a little framework of what direction we're going to go into with the show. So we wanted to kind of kickstart it off with like the foundation a bit. So today we did kind of like the foundation, the classics of doom. Next month, we're going to do something very similar. We're going to be looking at more of the bands that are considered like the stoner classics, right? The must-hear bands that kind of have infiltrated stoner rock. And again, we're probably looking 1990 and up, right, for the most part. So we'll each be giving you some of the mandatory listening albums for stoner. But then going forward, what we're going to do is because I know a lot of people want to watch this program and they want to get alerted of stuff they've never listened to before. So what we're going to do is we're going to go out either into our collections or onto the internet and onto some of these record labels, and we're going to start like going and checking out some more obscure stuff that maybe you guys haven't heard before, and maybe in some cases we haven't heard before or just started listening to. And we'll come to each episode with a couple of picks each of things that we've discovered that we want to talk about that you guys should go check out. So again, doom, stoner, psych, or a little bit of, like Karen said, a little bit of everything melded into one. It could be offshoots. As long as it's got the one important thing.
The fuzz, baby. It's all about the fuzz. Don't forget it.
All about the riffs and solos and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, as long as it's fuzzy music and it kind of, like I said, bleeds a little bit of all these things, that's what we're going to be talking about. So stay tuned next month. Karen, any last words for all of our wonderful fuzz viewers? We have to start calling them the fuzz viewers. No, that's not sexy enough. The loyal fuzz?
Fuzzheads, peach fuzz.
Our fuzzheads, there we go. The loyal fuzzheads, right? So we have to come up with a catchphrase for all of our viewers.
Oh, a catchphrase. All right. So I'm just going to reiterate. You don't think you like it, but chances are you do. You could find this music in bands like Slayer. There's Obituary. There's doomy parts. There's doom and sludge everywhere. And I mean fuzz, excuse me. It's in psychedelic music, modern psychedelic music. This type of music has taken me places and brought me to genres of music that I never thought I would be listening to, and even in taking me back to the 60s. And it's awesome. And I'm really looking forward to sharing this with you.
Yeah, and the 60s are not off limits by any means, because there's a lot of really good garage rock from the 60s.
Yeah,
hard psych, that's got all sorts of cool fuzzy stuff, and some of it's quite heavy, some of it's just raucous, right? I mean, shit, we could talk about the Stooges, we could talk about the MC5, we could talk about Blue Cheer. I mean, you know, again, we're going to try and go for more of the underground stuff, but we may mention a lot of these bands.
Those bands will come up in
yeah,
conversation.
absolutely. So yeah, so there you have it, all you fuzz heads. So stay tuned next month for another episode of All About the Fuzz, where we go down the stoner path next time. So please leave us your comments down below, and visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, all together, all the damn time. And tune in for both Karen and I on the Hudson Valley Squares next week, and we'll see you real soon here on All About the Fuzz. For Karen LaPreziosa, I am Pete Pardo. Have a good night, everybody. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Take care.